Let's talk about the Amazon Storage Gateway. Amazon Storage Gateway is a virtual machine that you could download, and you can either run on-site, or you can also run it on EC2. On-site, you have to have VMware or Hyper-V. It provides local storage resources that are back-ended by S3 and Glacier. So, for example, you can spin up a storage gateway in your local data center. You can then mount volumes locally there in your data center. And then the AWS Storage Gateway contains logic to synchronize that data back and forth to S3 or Glacier. A lot of organizations will use AWS as their quote-unquote hot site. So they'll use AWS Storage Gateway as an easy way to synchronize their on-premise data to the cloud. And then if they need to recover or fail over, they have mechanisms to do that. And the data is already out there on AWS. By the same token, it's also useful in cloud migrations because one of the challenges sometimes is getting all your data into AWS. And so the Storage Gateway can act as kind of a lazy way to slowly synchronize a bunch of data over time out to AWS. And then at some point in time, you can shut off your on-premise resources and you can go exclusively with your AWS resources. Now, Amazon Storage Gateway has different modes that it can run under. And on the exam, they generally refer to the old names for the modes. So we're going to call those out. We're going to call it old names here, but the new name is the new, most modern name. First up is something called File Gateway. Now, this exposes volumes as either NFS or SMB shares, so that whatever OS you have in your data center, you could mount them either via NFS or SMB. And then in the back end, all that data gets replicated to S3. The next mode is called Volume Gateway Stored Mode, or the old name is Gateway Stored Volumes. And these are exposed as iSCSI. And in essence, they just asynchronously replicate data to S3 in the background. So all of your data is still stored in your data center, but kind of behind the scenes, there's a job that's running and synchronizing that out to S3. Now, another mode is Volume Gateway Cached Mode, or the old name is Gateway Cached Volumes. This also has an iSCSI interface, and the difference between this mode is that the primary data is stored on S3. So what lives on your local volume in your data center is only those files or those objects that have been recently accessed. So it serves as a sort of cache for your data that's living out on S3. As I said in the previous slide, a lot of companies will use this to help them transition and migrate into the cloud. So I can set up a Volume Gateway Stored mode first, and then over time synchronize all my data out to S3. Then at some point in time, I can switch over to a cached mode, and then most of my data is stored out on S3, and I only have a small percentage that's on site, so I can either get rid of or reduce my requirement for on-premise storage using this method. Finally, there's the Tape Gateway, or the old name was Gateway Virtual Tape Library, and it also has an iSCSI interface. And it's really just designed to be a virtual media changer and a virtual tape library for use with existing backup software. And it supports many of the popular backup software that are out there today. You can check the documentation for your specific software if you're interested in this. So since the Storage Gateway contains a feature called bandwidth throttling, it's a pretty good solution in cases where you don't want to smash the bandwidth of, say, a remote office. In this example, we're using Storage Gateway in cached volume mode to provide a synchronized file experience for the remote offices. And those remote offices might have a limited bandwidth of their data connection. So all the data is still stored on S3 with those 11 nines behind it, but you're providing access and just the data that those remote offices need, and it's cached there locally for them.